Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. All right, happy St. Patrick's Day, um, 2025. So my main goal in 2025, actually, it started a little bit before that, was to return to the dating scene and meet important figures in my life. Not necessarily just that one romantic partner, but important figures in my life. You got to remember what propelled the whole situation in the first place. I was sick with long COVID during a heat wave here in Phoenix, all alone, and I ran into drama trying to navigate that all alone. I won't repeat that whole story here, but it was just after I had recovered from long COVID that I realized that I had very few avenues to go down at that point. It's uh, kind of fascinating. Just 4 months ago, I felt like I had no avenues, and now of how much things have changed. And today, I mark an important milestone. So, what had happened was that back in October, November, I was lost and confused. I hadn't gone on a date in years, and but I also thought to myself, gee, when I look back at my own history, I thought to myself, gee, of the times I did go on a first date, many times it went well. I got to go on a second date. A good percentage of the time, it ended up in a meaningful relationship. I just need to get that first date. It turned out the calculus was a little bit off, but I'll get to that in a second. But when I did the calculation, 60% of the time I went on the first date, I got to go on a second date. And so, and I did some Googling, and most people didn't have such high statistics. Most people said 20% or so. It's actually closer to, I'll get to why it was 60 back then. But most people said 20%. And I thought, gee, maybe I only suck at going on the first date. And I thought that I sucked at going on the first date, but I'll get to that in a second. And so I offered everybody around me a reward for somebody who can set me up on that first date. And I also looked up another number. How many first dates people go on before they typically get married or have some sort of committed relationship? It was about 30. And I mark halfway there today since I returned to the dating scene. And so I thought to myself, gee, how much money can I afford to spend going on 30 dates? And so I took the budget that I expected to use and I divided it by 30 and I offered that as a reward. And so a friend of mine from church set me up on this blind date, and that one actually went pretty well. Actually, nothing romantic, but important figures in my life. And I gave him, among other things, a 1 kilogram silver bar, a bunch of bismuth. Or actually, the bismuth I gave him is now worth more than the silver. Which is nice because it was like God validating what I had done, right? Here, I'll match all the rewards that you gave out, right? It was nice to see that, right? And so I went on the first blind date in many years, and then I went on another one, and then another one, and did I hit the sparks with anybody? Not really, but I met important figures in my life. Now, one thing to note about my 60% statistic, I came to discover part of the reason I was hitting such high batting averages was because myself and the other side, we were filtering out a lot of these things before we went on the first date. Now that I'm going on first dates blindly, I seem to be tending closer to what I saw on Google. So maybe it wasn't so bad what I was doing in the past. But you know what? I still want to go on these first dates that go nowhere anyway because I learn a lot from them. And then when I go on the ones that are in the 20%, I get to apply the lessons. So they're not a loss, right? And plus, you never know which one is among the 20%, right? And it leads to a lot of optimism, getting a lot of other stuff done. The only thing I don't like is that they still take up a lot of time. I come to realize that there's only so many hours in the day, and also there's only so many years a viable dating, right? Both kinds of time I find myself constrained about, and also bandwidth, right? Even if you only spend however many number of hours during the week going on your dates, they eat into a lot of bandwidth, right? Especially for somebody like me, I got into a fight with my roommate actually because I'd been all consumed after a date just like that, and I come home and my roommate just goes on and on and on about something, nothing even useful. I can't even remember what he started the conversation with. But my bandwidth is what I'm trying to say, right? It's kind of like if you were trying to, I program AI for various computer games. I got a computer with 64 gigabytes of RAM, but sometimes if you forget to close all your windows on Edge, right? If you try to open Tinder and Bumble and everything else on your Edge browser, you forget to close, and especially multiple windows of that, and before you know it, your computer games are lagging, right? That's how I feel in my head sometimes I lag with my work, with my roommate relationships, with my side hustles, with other goals in my life. I haven't been eating right and exercising right. I lag with other stuff, right? With distracted driving sometimes. I try not to do that, but you get the idea, right? Bandwidth. I had gone to my grandmother's funeral in Taiwan, and I asked my grandmother to go talk to Mary Curry. She and Mary Curry had coexisted for 6 months here on Earth. My grandmother was born 6 months before we lost Mary Curry. To ask Mary Curry to set me up on a blind date with one of her distant cousins. And so my grandmother was cremated, and when I went to her casket, I gave her some material to take to Mary Curry so she could continue her work. And so in her urn, and now it's worth a fortune. I hope grave robbers don't break into her urn, right? And after I got back from the funeral, I went back to my hotel room, and to take my mind off of grandmother passing, I hadn't used an online dating profile in years. For some reason, I decided to log on to Bumble, and when I did that, I was aghast at what I saw that I had written 7 years earlier. Got to remember, 7 years earlier, I was writing a lot of computer games. I didn't like the way I looked 7 years earlier, too. I actually look younger today than I did back then. So I had to start over, basically. Before long, I was eating sushi with a girl in Taiwan. She was in Nangang. Now, one thing I got to point out, during my time talking to her and finally going out with her, I got myself really stressed out because I had a lot of toxic company at the time. I had a colleague who decided to play with me after she realized that I was trying to network with people. She kept leading me down false hope. And so when I saw the profile on Bumble, first I thought it might have been a scam, and finally I thought she was going to ghost me. For 2, 3, 4 days, I was hanging by a thread. You may remember those last couple of days in Taiwan, I kept asking you guys to pray for me. I was a disaster, to say the least. And even the day of seeing her, I was a total wreck. I didn't want to believe she was real, that she was going to see me, and it made me resolve to cleanse my life of toxic people. I came back to the States, and so I started eating in the dining halls more at the college where I teach, and then I met a girl playing video games at a uh, new student orientation back in January, and I had sang karaoke one day at the college. You may have seen that, and this girl comes to talk to me, and we were playing. Tetris, actually, a new version of Tetris. I think it was called 99. And I told her about this Tetris tournament that I had hoped to go to. Again, it didn't go anywhere, but it's one of those things that it boosted my confidence that I could just go up to somebody and talk to them. I then learned about a speed dating event here in the Phoenix area, And the other night, I got her to join me on part of the lunar eclipse. I think I'm going to see her again. But she had to go home early from that. And what are some other highlights? And then the girl in Houston, obviously. I traveled to Houston to see a girl that I had met on Bumble, and had some good conversations. She had brought me some inspiration with my art project. And so, sing with me. We're halfway there, right, out of 30. And like I said, I was a little disappointed. I thought my batting average was really the 60%. What I was doing was filtering out a bunch of or I don't know if it was on my end or on their end. We were filtering out the first dates that weren't going to work. And as a result, I got probably as many second dates as I would have had I not been so aggressive. But you know what? Those first dates that don't work out are good practice too. So I'm not sure which way is better. They just take up a lot of bandwidth, a lot of time and money. But I think it's still a good investment in general. I'm not sure if the statistic of 1 out of 30 first dates includes these aggressive ones as well, or if they involve the ones. To give you an idea of how aggressively I've been dating, a few more dates from now, and I'll be able to say that I've been on more first dates in just 3 months than I had in the 37 years before that, right? And so I don't know if the statistics apply to this kind of dating or the previous kind, right? So it's hard to say. All right, we're halfway there. This is the Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum.